Commander Lisa Powell gripped the railing as another explosion rocked the observation deck. Through the viewport, she watched the last major Alliance battleship break apart under Celian fire. Bright flashes lit up the darkness of space around Triton, Neptune's largest moon. 300 years of war was ending today, not with a negotiated peace, but with their complete destruction. "Commander, we have to leave now," Alan Garcia said, his voice tight with urgency. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. "The Celians have breached the lower decks. We have maybe 10 minutes before they reach command." Lisa nodded, unable to tear her eyes away from the death of everything she had sworn to protect. The Galactic Alliance had stood for nearly a millennium, bringing peace and prosperity to 1,000 worlds. Now it was falling to the Celians, a species that valued conquest above all else. "Route all personnel to the horizon," she ordered. "How many of us are left?" 22, Alan replied. Most of the command staff didn't make it. A new light flashed on the main screen. Admiral Vrax, Supreme Commander of the Celian forces, broadcast his message across all frequencies. His reptilian face filled the screen, scales gleaming under the lights of his bridge. "This day marks the end of your pathetic alliance," he said, mandibles clicking with pleasure. "Your worlds now belong to the Celian Empire. Resistance is finished. Submit, and you may live to serve." Lisa turned away. "Let's go." They ran through corridors filled with smoke and the bodies of fallen comrades. The horizon, a small scout ship docked at the far end of the station, was their only hope now. Engineer Danielle Wright waited at the airlock, face smeared with grease. "I've got the engines hot, but the warp drive is damaged," she reported. "We'll have limited jump capability." "That's fine," Lisa said as they hurried aboard. "We just need to get away from here." The horizon detached from the dying station, just as Celian boarding craft cut through its main hull. The small ship slipped away while the enemy was focused on claiming their prize. Hours later, in the safety of deep space, Lisa called the survivors to the ship's small mess hall. Tired faces looked back at her, hoping for good news she couldn't give. "The Alliance has fallen," she began simply. "All major military installations have been destroyed. Our communication networks are compromised. Our leadership is dead or captured." Silence met her words. They had all known this was coming, but hearing it stated so plainly made it real. "So that's it?" Alan asked. 300 years fighting the Celians, and we just lose." Lisa took a deep breath. "Maybe not. There's something the Alliance kept secret, even from most of its members. A contingency plan." Danielle looked up sharply. "What kind of plan could possibly help us now? The Celians have better ships, better weapons, and vastly more numbers." "It's not about technology," Lisa replied. "It's about finding help from an unexpected source." She activated a small holographic projector, displaying a blue-green planet. "This is Earth." "Earth?" Alan frowned. "The primitive world in the Sol system. They don't even have proper space travel yet. They were deemed too undeveloped to join the Alliance," Lisa explained. "But some of our scientists kept watching them. They noted something unusual about the humans. What could primitives possibly offer against the Celians?" someone asked. Lisa looked at each of them. "Humans have an approach to warfare unlike any species we've encountered. They adapt rapidly. They use tactics our military experts would consider unorthodox, and they have a history of defeating technologically superior enemies." "You want to ask primitives for military advice?" Danielle sounded skeptical. "I want to forge an alliance with a species the Celians don't know exists," Lisa said firmly. "A species with a perspective neither we nor the Celians possess." She zoomed in on the hologram, showing Earth's continents and oceans. "The Celians believe they've won. They're celebrating their triumph. But they don't know about the humans. And right now, that's our only advantage." The horizon drifted silently through the darkness of space. Lisa studied the star charts in the ship's small command center. They had avoided 3 Celian patrols in the past week. Each time had been too close for comfort. How much longer until we reached the Sol system? Ellen asked, bringing her a cup of synthetic coffee. 2 more jumps, Lisa replied. If the warp drive holds. Danielle entered the room, wiping her hands on a rag. I've patched it as best I can, but one more major strain might burn it out completely. Lisa nodded. The crew had gathered around her, curious about this mysterious Earth she had mentioned. For most of them, it was just a name in old Alliance records, a planet deemed too primitive for contact. Tell us more about these humans, Danielle said, taking the seat. What makes them so special? Lisa activated the holographic display again. It showed images of Earth collected over centuries by Alliance observers. Humans evolved on a planet with extreme environmental diversity, she explained. They adapted to survive in deserts, Arctic regions, mountains, and oceans. This forced them to become incredibly resourceful. The display changed to show human history, buildings rising and falling, borders shifting across continents. But what makes them truly unique is their approach to conflict. Lisa continued. Humans have fought wars against each other throughout their history. But unlike most species, they don't have standard battle doctrines. They constantly innovate. That doesn't sound very impressive, someone muttered. Consider this, Lisa said, bringing up new images. Early in their history, a small human force defeated a much larger army by using the terrain to their advantage. They led their enemies into narrow mountain passes where superior numbers meant nothing. She cycled through more examples. Later, when one human nation developed powerful weapons, their enemies adapted with guerrilla tactics. When defenses improved, they found ways around them. They developed countermeasures for every advantage. Ellen frowned. The Alliance has military strategists too. Yes, but our strategies evolved for fighting honorable opponents who follow similar rules, Lisa replied. The Celians broke those rules, and we couldn't adapt quickly enough. The display showed a primitive human aircraft carrier. Look at this. When humans began aerial warfare, they immediately created ships specifically to carry aircraft. The Alliance took 50 years to develop the same concept after encountering atmospheric planets. Danielle leaned forward, suddenly interested. Their innovation cycle is faster. Much faster, Lisa confirmed. And they think in ways neither we nor the Celians do. They use deception, misdirection, and psychological warfare as standard practice. So what exactly are you proposing? Ellen asked. We can't give them our technology. It would violate every Alliance principle. Lisa shut down the display. The Alliance is gone, Ellen. And I'm not suggesting we give them technology. I'm suggesting we ask for their help, their perspective, their way of thinking. They're primitives, someone objected. They haven't even colonized their own solar system properly. The Celians don't know they exist, Lisa countered. And they won't expect what humans might come up with. Right now, surprise is the only advantage we have. The ship shuddered slightly as they prepared for another warp jump. Outside the viewport, stars stretched into lines as they moved closer to their destination. What if they refuse to help us? Danielle asked quietly. Or what if they can't? Lisa's expression remained determined. Then we'll have lost nothing but time. But if they can help, if they're even half as resourceful as our observations suggest, we might have found the one thing that Celians never expected to face. The horizon jumped again, leaving a brief flash of light in the empty space behind it. On their scanners, a yellow star grew larger. The Sol system was ahead. Prepare for our approach, Lisa ordered. And let's hope these humans are everything we need them to be. The horizon limped into Earth's orbit, trailing a thin line of plasma from its damaged engine. Lisa ordered the ship to position itself near a large human space station. Their sensors showed it was primitive by Alliance standards, but impressive for a species that had only recently reached space. We're being scanned, Alan reported from his station. Crude radio waves. Their technology is exactly as our records indicated. On the space station, astronaut Jack Nelson was conducting a routine maintenance check outside when he spotted the alien ship. He froze in his bulky spacesuit, the tool in his hand forgotten. "Houston, are you seeing this?" He radioed, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "There's an unidentified craft about 2 kilometers from the station. Definitely not one of ours." Back on Earth, military bases went on high alert. Fighter jets scrambled, though everyone knew they would be useless in space. World leaders gathered in emergency sessions, their arguments about national interests temporarily forgotten in the face of a possible alien threat. "They're trying to communicate with us using radio signals," Alan told Lisa. "Very basic encoding. Should I respond?" Lisa nodded. "Yes. Keep it simple. Tell them we come in peace and request a meeting with their leaders." Jack was called into an urgent video conference with NASA officials and military personnel. "The vessel is damaged," a general said. "Our readings show radiation leaking from what might be their propulsion system. They're asking to meet with our leaders," added a communications specialist. The message was in English, which is unexpected. Jack leaned toward the camera. "Let me talk to them. If they wanted to attack, they would have done it already." After heated debate, Jack got permission to establish direct communication with the alien ship. To everyone's surprise, the alien commander spoke nearly perfect English. "I am Commander Lisa Powell of the Galactic Alliance," she said, her image appearing on Jack's screen. "Our ship is damaged, and we request permission to land. We need your help." Jack was selected to lead the welcoming committee. When the Horizon landed at a secure military facility in Nevada, tanks and soldiers surrounded the landing site as the alien craft descended with visible difficulty. When the door opened, Jack was surprised to see beings that looked almost human. Lisa Powell could have passed for a tall human woman with unusual silver eyes. The others showed more alien features: scaled skin, extra fingers, slightly different proportions, but were still recognizably humanoid. "Thank you for allowing us to land," Lisa said, extending her hand in a gesture she had learned from studying human customs. Jack shook it, feeling the slightly cooler temperature of her skin. "Welcome to Earth. I'm Jack Nelson." Hours later, Lisa sat in a conference room with Jack, Colonel Samantha Bell from the military, and diplomat Richard Martinez. She had explained the basics of their situation: the fall of the Alliance, the Celian threat, and why they had come to Earth. "Let me get this straight," Samantha said, tapping her pen against a notepad. "A massive alien empire has conquered most of known space, destroyed your civilization, and you came to us for help. What can we possibly do against an enemy with that level of technology?" Lisa activated a small device that projected images of Celian warships and battle formations. "It's not about technology," she explained. "It's about thinking differently. The Celians have a specific way of fighting. They're predictable. But they've never encountered humans before." Richard frowned. "You're saying you want our military advice? Our tactics?" "Yes," Lisa nodded. "The Alliance fought the Celians for 3 centuries and lost because we couldn't adapt quickly enough. Humans are masters of adaptation. You've proven that throughout your history." Jack studied the projected images of the Celian ships. "If you know their weaknesses, why couldn't you exploit them yourselves?" Lisa's expression was solemn. "Because we didn't see them as weaknesses. We need fresh eyes. Human eyes." Colonel Samantha Bell stood before a large screen showing Celian battle formations. The room was filled with military officers from several countries, all focused on the alien threat Lisa had described. "Look at these patterns," Samantha said, pointing to the screen. "The Celians always position their command ships in the center of their fleet. They protect their leaders at all costs." Lisa nodded. "That's part of their honor code. The commander must be at the heart of the battle." "That's not an advantage," Samantha replied. "That's a weakness. If we know exactly where their leadership is, we can target them specifically." Ellen looked surprised. "But that would be..." He paused, searching for the right word. Effective, Jack finished for him. War isn't about fairness, it's about winning. In another room, Richard Martinez studied Celian communication, records Lisa had provided. They never lie during negotiations, he said, fascinated. Even when it would benefit them, they state their exact intentions every time. Deception is dishonorable in their culture, Lisa explained. They believe superior strength makes lies unnecessary. Richard smiled. Then they'll never expect us to use disinformation against them. Meanwhile, Jack worked with Danielle and a team of engineers. They examined the damaged horizon, studying its technology. Your engines are more advanced than ours, Jack said, but the principles are similar. We can adapt our manufacturing to produce parts for repairs. Danielle watched in amazement as the human engineers quickly understood concepts that had taken Alliance scientists years to develop. How are you learning this so quickly? She asked. Jack shrugged. Humans are good at reverse engineering. We've been taking things apart and figuring out how they work for our entire history. That evening, Lisa met with the human team to discuss their progress. She was surprised by how much they had accomplished in just one day. Colonel Bell has identified 17 weaknesses in standard Celian battle formations, Lisa told the group. The Alliance never saw them as weaknesses because we fought the same way. Their tactics assume an enemy that follows the same rules they do, Samantha explained. They expect frontal assaults, announced attacks, and clear battle lines. We can use that expectation against them. Richard added, their culture has no concept of bluffing. They always commit exactly the forces they claim they will. If we tell them we have 100 ships in one location, they'll believe us. And we've already started adapting your technology, Jack said. We think we can integrate some of our innovations with your systems. Your ship's stealth capabilities can be improved using materials we've developed for our aircraft. Lisa looked at the humans with growing hope. For the first time since the fall of the Alliance, she felt they might have a chance. The Alliance always prided itself on fighting with honor, she said quietly. We announced our attacks. We engaged in formal battles. We never used deception. And that's why you lost, Samantha said bluntly. The Celians had the same code, but they had better ships and more soldiers. In an even fight with the same rules, the bigger force wins. Humans have always had to find ways to defeat larger, stronger enemies, Jack explained. Throughout our history, smaller forces have defeated larger ones by being smarter, faster, and willing to break the rules. Lisa realized what had been the Alliance's fatal flaw. They had been fighting a war of attrition against an enemy with more resources. They never changed their approach, even as they lost ground year after year. The Celians believe the war is over, she said. They're celebrating their victory, dividing up Alliance territories, relaxing their guard. Good, Samantha replied with a determined smile. That's exactly when you're most vulnerable to a surprise attack. 6 months passed. The horizon floated in space, but it looked very different now. Human engineers had rebuilt its damaged sections and added new components. The hull was covered with a dark material that absorbed light and sensor signals. Jack called it stealth technology, something humans had developed for their aircraft. Inside the ship, a mixed crew of Alliance survivors and humans prepared for their first mission. Lisa studied the small fleet behind them. Earth had built 5 more ships using Alliance designs combined with human innovations. They were smaller than Celian warships but faster and harder to detect. Are you sure this will work? Alan asked, checking the communication systems. Lisa watched as Jack entered the bridge, now wearing an Alliance-style uniform adapted for human comfort. It has to work, she replied. This is just a test mission. We hit a small outpost, test our tactics, and get out. Samantha joined them, reviewing the battle plan one last time. The target is a minor Celian listening post on the edge of what used to be Alliance space. It has minimal defenses because the Celians don't expect any resistance anymore. Everyone knows their roles. Jack asked the bridge crew. Nods all around. Humans and Alliance survivors had trained together for months. They had become a single team, learning from each other. "Then let's show the Celians that this war isn't over yet," Lisa said. The small fleet jumped into space near the Celian outpost. On the station, alarms blared as sensors detected the approaching ships. The Celian commander was confused. The Alliance had been defeated. Who would dare attack them? "Prepare defensive positions," the commander ordered his crew. "Form standard battle formation and ready the main weapons." But the Earth ships didn't approach in a standard formation. They split up, attacking from multiple directions at once. The Celians tried to track them, but the stealth technology made them hard to target. "They're not following proper battle procedures," the Celian commander complained. "Where is their formal challenge? Where is their main battle group?" On the horizon, Jack smiled as he heard the confused Celian communications. "They don't understand what's happening," he told Lisa. "They're looking for patterns they recognize." Small, fast fighters launched from the Earth ships. Piloted by human volunteers, they darted around the Celian station, hitting key systems and then disappearing before the defenders could respond. "Target their communication array," Samantha ordered over the radio. "Don't let them call for help." The Celians tried to adapt, but their rigid training worked against them. They expected enemies to follow certain rules of engagement. The human tactics seemed random and chaotic to them. Within an hour, the station's defenses were crippled. A boarding team led by Jack and Samantha entered the station while the Celians were still trying to organize their internal defenses. "Split up," Jack told his team. "Small groups, just like we practiced. Use the confusion to our advantage." The boarding team moved through the station, capturing key areas and downloading Celian data. The defenders were constantly surprised, never knowing where the humans would appear next. When the mission was complete, the Earth fleet regrouped and prepared to jump away. The Celian station was damaged but not destroyed. That was intentional. Lisa wanted the Celians to know they had been defeated. "Send the message," she told Alan. A simple communication was broadcast to the station. "The Alliance lives. This is just the beginning." Back on Earth, the team reviewed their success. They had captured valuable Celian technology and intelligence. More importantly, they had proven that human tactics could work against the enemy. This was just one small outpost. Samantha reminded everyone. "The real challenge comes next." Lisa nodded. "But now we know it can be done. And soon, the news will spread through Celian space. For the first time, they'll face an enemy they don't understand." Jack looked at the star map showing Celian territory. "Next time, we hit something bigger." Admiral Vrax slammed his fist on the table, causing his officers to flinch. Reports of attacks on Celian outposts had been coming in for weeks now. Each one followed the same pattern. Quick strikes by ships that seemed to appear from nowhere, using tactics that made no sense by Celian standards. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "The Alliance was destroyed. Their fleets are gone. Their worlds are under our control." An officer pushed forward a data tablet. "The attackers leave this message after each raid, Admiral. They claim the Alliance still lives." "Find them," Vrax ordered. "I want a battle group assigned to hunt down these raiders. They fight without honor, using tricks and deception. They must be eliminated." Across the galaxy, on a recently liberated former Alliance world, Lisa and the human team established their first permanent base. Earth ships arrived regularly, bringing more volunteers and supplies. Word was spreading that someone was fighting back against the Celians. Jack supervised the installation of a new weapon system on one of their ships. It was based on a simple concept from Earth naval history: submarines that could attack while remaining hidden underwater. Jack had adapted this idea for space warfare. "The Celians never developed true stealth technology," he explained to Danielle. "They consider hiding to be dishonorable. But we've now equipped 10 ships with systems that make them nearly invisible to Celian sensors." Danielle marveled at the innovation. "The Alliance studied Earth birds to develop our first flight systems, but we never thought to use owl feathers as a model for stealth technology." Hull feathers absorb sound, Jack said. We applied the same principle to absorb energy from scanning systems. In another part of the base, Richard coordinated with newly liberated worlds. Many had suffered under brief Celian occupation and were eager to join the resistance. We now have allies on 17 planets, he reported to Lisa. They're providing intelligence on Celian movements and safe havens for our ships. Samantha entered with a serious expression. Vrax has dispatched a battle group specifically to hunt us down. Our last raid got his attention. Lisa nodded. Good. That means our strategy is working. The more forces he commits to chasing us, the fewer he has to maintain control of occupied territories. But we can't fight a battle group head-on, Alan pointed out. They have too many ships, too much firepower. Jack smiled. We don't need to fight them head-on. That's what they expect. Instead, we'll draw them into a series of small engagements, always on our terms. Over the next few weeks, the human-led forces continued their hit-and-run attacks. As predicted, Vrax's battle group kept arriving too late, finding only damaged Celian outposts and the same taunting message. The Celian admiral became increasingly frustrated. His carefully planned pursuit always seemed one step behind the raiders. His officers began to whisper that these enemies might have supernatural powers to predict Celian movements. They're not supernatural, Vrax growled when he overheard such talk. They're just using dishonorable tactics. No true warrior hides from battle. But the truth was simpler. Richard had discovered that Celian battle plans were absolutely predictable. They always followed the same protocols, used the same search patterns, and responded to attacks in the same way every time. They haven't changed their basic military doctrine in 500 years, Richard explained to the team. They never needed to because it always worked for them before. Until now, Samantha said with satisfaction. On his flagship, Vrax reviewed the latest intelligence. The raiders had hit 3 more outposts in the past week. The pattern made no sense to him. There was no strategic value to some of the targets, no proper military objective. What he didn't understand was that the targets were chosen specifically because they didn't make sense. The humans deliberately avoided patterns that Celians could recognize. Admiral, an officer reported, the High Command is concerned about these continued attacks. They're asking for results. Vrax's scales darkened with anger. Tell them I will crush these vermin personally. I will not rest until every last one of them is destroyed. Back at the resistance base, Lisa received the intercepted communication and smiled. Vrax is making this personal now. That means he'll take risks, make mistakes. Exactly as we planned, Jack said. Admiral Vrax's massive fleet gathered near Jupiter. Finally, after months of frustration, he had trapped the human-led resistance forces. His spies had discovered their plan to attack a Celian supply depot in the outer solar system. Now his ships waited in ambush, ready to crush the upstart humans once and for all. The enemy will arrive within the hour, his second-in-command reported. They have no idea we are waiting for them. This time, they cannot escape. Vrax's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Position our forces according to standard combat formation. When they arrive, we will surround them completely. Meanwhile, far from Jupiter, Lisa and Jack stood on the bridge of their flagship. The main resistance fleet was gathered around them, preparing for their largest operation yet. Are you sure Vrax took the bait? Lisa asked. Jack nodded. Our fake communications worked perfectly. Richard made sure the Celians intercepted our secret battle plans for the Jupiter attack. And Vrax has committed nearly his entire fleet to the ambush, Samantha added. Just as we predicted. His pride wouldn't let him assign this mission to anyone else. The real target was not Jupiter at all. While Vrax waited there with his fleet, the resistance would strike at the Celian command center that coordinated their occupation of former Alliance worlds. Begin the operation, Lisa ordered, and send the decoy ships to Jupiter as planned. Near Jupiter, Vrax's sensors detected a small group of ships dropping out of warp. He prepared to give the order to attack, but something seemed wrong. There were only 5 ships, much fewer than intelligence had suggested. "Where is the rest of their fleet?" he demanded. Before his officers could respond, the small ships began behaving strangely. They seemed damaged, drifting without purpose. When Celian scanners analyzed them more closely, they discovered the ships were empty. No crew, minimal power, just automated systems. Vrax suddenly realized the truth. It's a trap, a diversion. His scales darkened with rage. Contact Command Headquarters immediately. But it was too late. The Resistance fleet had already arrived at the poorly defended Celian Command Center. Human fighters swarmed around the station, targeting communication arrays and weapon systems with surgical precision. Inside her fighter, Samantha led the attack on the station's defenses. "Remember the plan," she told her pilots. "Disable, don't destroy. We need this station intact." The Celian defenders were caught completely unprepared. They had never imagined an attack on their command center was possible. Most of their forces were with Vrax, waiting at Jupiter for an attack that would never come. Jack led the boarding team that breached the station. Using the owl-inspired stealth technology, they slipped past internal defenses and made their way to the command center. "This isn't possible," the Celian commander said when humans suddenly appeared on his bridge. "How did you get past our security?" "You might want to ask Admiral Vrax that question," Jack replied as his team secured the room. Back at Jupiter, Vrax received the news of the command center's capture. For the first time in his long military career, he had been completely outmaneuvered. The humans had used his own arrogance against him, making him focus on a target they never intended to attack. "Set course for command headquarters, maximum speed," he ordered, his voice tight with fury. But when his fleet arrived, they found the station intact, but under new management. Lysa's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral Vrax, this station is now under Resistance control. Your access codes have been changed, and your remaining forces in Alliance territory have lost central coordination. This is not how war is fought." Vrax responded angrily. "You use tricks and deceptions instead of facing us honorably in battle." "No," Lysa replied calmly. "This is exactly how war is fought when you're outnumbered and outgunned. You just never had to learn that lesson before." The Resistance had won its first major victory. With control of the command center, they could disrupt Celian operations across a wide area of space. More importantly, they had shown that the supposedly invincible Celian military could be defeated. "Now they know we're serious," Jack said as they secured their new base. "And this is just the beginning." 1 year after the capture of the Celian command center, Lysa stood on the observation deck of the new Alliance flagship. The view before her would have seemed impossible when she had fled the fall of the Alliance with her small crew. A fleet of ships, some built by Earth, some captured from the Celians, some contributed by liberated worlds, filled the space around them. "Admiral Powell," Alan said, using her new rank as he entered the deck. "The representatives are ready for the ceremony." Lysa nodded and followed him to the conference room where delegates from dozens of worlds waited. Some were former Alliance members. Others were new allies who had joined the fight against the Celians. Jack and Samantha stood near the front, now wearing formal uniforms that combined Alliance and Earth designs. "The Celian Empire has agreed to sign the peace treaty," Lysa announced to the gathering. "They have withdrawn to their original borders before the war and recognized the independence of all former Alliance worlds." Applause filled the room. What had begun as a desperate mission with a damaged scout ship had grown into a movement that pushed back the seemingly unstoppable Celian advance. Jack took his place at the speaker's platform. As Earth's chief representative in the new Confederation, he had played a key role in the negotiations. "When Commander Powell first arrived at Earth, we knew nothing about the wider galaxy," he said. "We were considered too primitive to join the Alliance, but sometimes a fresh perspective is exactly what's needed." He displayed a map showing the new borders of what they now called the Star Confederation, larger than the old Alliance had been, with Earth holding a prominent place in its leadership. The Celians weren't defeated by superior technology, Jack continued. They were defeated because they couldn't adapt to our unpredictable tactics. They expected everyone to fight the way they did, with the same rules and the same patterns. Samantha joined him at the platform. We've established training centers on 20 worlds, teaching the combined military methods developed during the war. Never again will we be limited to a single approach to defense. After the ceremony, Lisa found a quiet moment with Jack and the original crew of the Horizon. I never imagined it would end like this when we fled to Earth, she admitted. I just hoped for some advice, maybe a few volunteers to continue the resistance. Humans don't do things halfway, Jack replied with a smile. Once we learned there was a galactic empire trying to conquer everything, we couldn't just offer advice. Danielle, who now led a team of engineers combining human and Alliance technology, nodded in agreement. The Alliance's greatest mistake was thinking that technological advancement was the only measure of a civilization's worth. Richard, who had just returned from the final negotiations with the Celians, joined them. The Celian ambassador said something interesting today. He said they failed because they were too successful for too long. They never had to innovate or adapt because their methods always worked before. Until they met humans, Lisa said. Later that day, a scout ship reported an interesting discovery. A previously uncontacted world with signs of developing technology. The old Alliance would have simply observed from a distance, waiting until the civilization reached a certain technological threshold. Jack had a different idea. We should make contact now, he suggested. Who knows what unique perspectives they might offer? What we learned from this war is that different viewpoints are valuable, even from cultures we might consider less advanced. Lisa agreed. The new Confederation would be different from the old Alliance. More inclusive, more adaptive, and stronger because of its diversity. As they prepared a first contact mission, Lisa looked back on the journey that had brought them to this point. The Celians had celebrated their triumph too soon. They hadn't counted on humans and their unique approach to challenges. What had begun with a desperate hope had transformed into a new beginning for the galaxy, one where no single perspective or approach would dominate. And it all started because they had decided to contact a human.